Hello and welcome to the Inclusion Effect. I'm Anna and I'm here to talk with guests and with you all about disability advocacy, inclusion, and the ups and downs of navigating a world that frankly isn't built for the disability community. Today's guest here with me is my good friend Tiffany. Hi, Tiffany. So Tiffany has quite the story. She doesn't really do social media, so I don't have any social media to point you guys towards. But she's the opposite of me in that way. But we became friends through the Down Syndrome Diagnosis Network a long time ago, and I'll be seeing her next week across the country in Georgia, and I'm so excited. Tiffany, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your story?
Okay. Hi. So I guess I could start with I'm an architect. I worked really hard. Like my career was super important. So in my 20s, I got my master's degree in architecture. I went and got my license when I was 28. I was like all about like my career, and then like marriage and kids and all the rest of that wasn't really a thing for me until I turned like 31 and I decided I wanted babies, and like just clicked, and it was one of those things where I was like, must have babies, let's get married. So like I'd been with my now husband since I was like 19, and so I was like, all right, let's just do it because I gave you all of my 20s. It is time now to like get married and try having babies, because who knows what's going to happen.
Right.
Oh Lord. So the journey to have babies is one of those things that like I don't know, it just when you're, I don't know if we're spinning fairy tales or what's going on, but you just think it's so simple. You get off birth control and you immediately get pregnant and have a baby in 9 months. Like if you see those pink lines, like it's going to happen. Yeah. Well, guess what? That doesn't happen for everyone. And for those that it does happen to, it's one of those things where it's actually called fertility privileged. And it's one of those
I
things
have
where like
never
I
heard that
had
term
no,
before.
yes,
I
because
guess
it's
I
one of those
have
things
that, I
where
guess.
you just have no idea how difficult it can be. And
Yeah.
so one of those things was like, so we got married and I thought like, oh, we're going to have babies immediately. Yeah, no. It took almost a year to get pregnant with my first one. And oh, God, was that ever frustrating. And it was one of those things like we were ready to like go see a fertility doctor. And then finally it happened, like, okay, great. So this happened. And then like, it was not a good pregnancy. I mean, it was one of those things like I was sick and like all the things. And then at my 26-week appointment, oh yeah, I guess that happened on the 26th week. Anyways, I found out I had gestational diabetes and also preeclampsia.
Ugh.
And so I ended up on bed rest, but the gestational diabetes thing was like huge for me because it made it so that like I understood why I was so sick. Like my whole body just couldn't handle what I was eating. So I had gained like 40 pounds. And by that point, when I figured that out, and that's the beginning of your third trimester. And so when I figured it out and I was like checking what I was eating and everything, I felt like a million times better. And I only gained like 5 pounds in my third trimester.
Wow.
It was like insane. And I was able to control like the preeclampsia and like all the rest of that by, not really doing much because I was on bed rest. But anyway, so then, so then I had Rosemary, and it was a failed induction. It was super traumatizing, I thought, before my next
Little did we know.
next one. Little did we know. Because I had to have like an emergency C-section, and she didn't end up with any NICU time, but like, so I was able to have that like whole like birth experience of like, I mean, not the real, like the regular one where they like put them on your chest and like all the rest of that. Like I really wanted that. It didn't happen, whatever, it's fine. I'm good with it. But I did get to actually have her in my like maternity or postpartum room. So that was amazing. And it was the only experience I ended up with that. And I have 4 babies. Anyways. So then that's Rosemary. That's my oldest. She is now 6. And she is like a typical kiddo, relatively uncomplicated, didn't understand anything. It was one of those things. I still was not exactly humble, but I was slightly. So after that, we tried to have another one because I wanted to have them close in age, and found out like I had all kinds of issues. I had 3 miscarriages. the first one broke me like so bad. Like it was one of those things where I like legitimately refused to talk to anybody. It was blighted ovum, like where it like the fetus didn't end up growing, and so we never saw a heartbeat. But like it was a miscarriage, so I didn't find out until like 12 weeks, and so
Ugh.
I was still having all the pregnancy symptoms and everything, and I had to have a DNC, and that was like having a DNC at like 12 weeks or on like anything past that, literally, I had postpartum depression. Like, I had postpartum depression because I
Yeah.
was pregnant. Like, my body didn't know that the baby wasn't developing, and
Yeah.
I was pregnant, and it was just insane to me. And so that humbled me by so much because, and then it was just one of those things, like I ended up having two more, and like it was a lot. And so my OB though was an absolute amazing goddess. Like she was amazing. Like she had had a miscarriage before, so she understood what I was going through. And so
Yeah.
after the first one, the whole like OB experience was great because, well, not great, but it was one of those things where they were very cognizant and were good. So like if you ever end up having like a miscarriage after the first one, you need to make sure that your OB is like on board with monitoring, like, and you're trying to still get pregnant, and you know you're monitoring it. So one of the things I learned was like the second you figure out that you're pregnant, like you need to go and get blood tests. So they want to test not just your HCG, you want to test your progesterone, because those two things can tell you at a very early stage whether or not, if it's doubling, then the baby is growing.
I don't
And
think
if
I
your
realized that.
progesterone
I don't
and
think I
if your
realized that. Yeah.
progesterone is at like a certain level, like if it's over 20, then it's a normal pregnancy, you're fine, it's going to develop. If it's between 10 and 20, they need you need supplemental progesterone in order to help the baby get to the second trimester. And if it's under 10, or if really 9, then it's the beginning of a miscarriage. And so like they can tell where you are at in order to like see if they can help the pregnancy along. Yeah, these are all things I had no idea were a thing.
Interesting.
And
Yeah, I don't know if
like,
you remember, I had to have a D&E at 21 weeks
mhm.
last May, so little over a year ago, and first of
I
all,
know.
absolutely had postpartum afterwards.
I
That was
know. I told you.
crazy. I
We
know
were
we talked about it a
talking, and I was
ton.
like,
hmm
Anna, I'm pretty sure you're having postpartum depression. And you're like,
And
but
I
it
didn't realize
wasn't
that was
my
possible.
baby. I was doing
It was
surrogacy.
a
I was like, it
surrogacy,
has
yeah, yeah.
nothing to do with that. It has
It
everything
was
to
my
do with your
body, yeah. And
hormone
I kept
levels.
gaining weight
Like,
for a while afterwards too, which was also so bizarre. Yeah, before I
yeah,
lost all the baby weight, I was gaining weight still as if my body like thought I was still pregnant, even
your
though I
body
wasn't.
still thought you were pregnant.
But
Yes,
that's good to know
yes,
about the
it's a
testing. Yeah,
thing.
that's crazy.
Yes. So it was just one of those things, like I learned all these things along the way. Of course, like I ended up learning it because one of my other girlfriends had like a miscarriage and like had to do all these things, and she was like total super science math nerd with me on the same level, where it was just like, let me tell you all the numbers. So I was always about that, like
Yeah.
even before I got to my child that has Down syndrome. And then at that point, it was one of those things where I had 3 miscarriages. They're like, so here's another terrible thing, that the insurance agencies will not pay for any miscarriage management or anything unless you've had 3. They will pay for all the blood tests and all the things to do it after you've had 3 completely earth-shattering heartbreaks. Like 3, not 1, not 2, 3. Anyways, that is a story for another day. But yeah, so after the third one, they tested me, and it was one of those things, like on my third one, my OB was like, okay, so here are the like main things that we can do without having the test. Like you can have the supplemental progesterone and it won't hurt you even if you don't need it. You can take some baby aspirin just in case you have some of these other things, and then also like try and find a prenatal vitamin that doesn't have folic acid, which by the way 90% of them do, because I ended up having the MTHFR mutation, and it means you cannot process folic acid into folate, so you
When
have
I
to find
got
something
my
with folate.
when I got my ADHD testing, I found out that I also have the MTHFR,
So
I
you can
think,
have
mutation.
2 mutations from it, but yeah, I only
Yeah.
have the one.
And so I've
And
been taking a daily folate that they prescribed me,
mhm.
and it seems to be helping a lot. That along with some Adderall because I'm you know,
Yeah.
me.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah, and
Um,
that seems to be really helping.
well, and it's funny. It's one of those things like I found out that like the folate and that kind of, or the folic acid, like what it'll do is it will thicken your blood just enough to not let the fetus get enough of the blood flow to get to the second trimester. So that's what the baby aspirin is for. So they're
Hmm.
like, take a baby aspirin, get some supplemental progesterone. And then I also have an insulin resistance. So I had to take, what was I taking? Metformin at the time. So
Oh yeah,
all those
yeah,
things helped me. And it was one of those things where she was like, here, we could just dole those out. Like none of that will
yeah.
hurt you if you don't need it. You already had gestational diabetes. So the metformin's fine, like all the rest of that, right? So then I get pregnant and I'm like, okay, like Lonnie, like my husband, I'm like, you have to come with me. Like, what if it's another one where there's no heartbeat? Like, I don't know what to
Yeah.
do. This is in September of 2021. It's like one of those times where it's like sort of COVID, like, and they were sort of not. And so they were actually allowing him to come in because I was like, oh my God, I really need him here. Like, you know, what if the baby doesn't have a heartbeat? So we go in, and of course, like everybody's wearing masks, which I find hilarious when you're at an OB because you have everything hanging out, but
Right.
your mouth is covered. Anyways, oh, and they're like, hey, like, where are you on fertility drugs? Because they knew of all the things that were in. I was like, no, why? And they're like, because there's two. Because I was like, tell
Mic
me there's a
drop.
heartbeat. And they said, well, there's two. And I was like, two what? Two heartbeats. And I was like, is one of them mine? Like, what are you talking about? And they're like, no, it's twins. And I was like,
You're so
I'm
funny.
sorry, say what now?
It's one of them mine.
What?
Uh,
Okay, so we went from wanting to have just one more to now having twins, and you're like, holy moly, what are we gonna do now? Okay, great. Okay, yes, we can manage this, sure. Right? And then of course that immediately kicked me into being high risk. I was already kind of high risk anyways
yeah.
with the miscarriages. And so I ended up, I can't remember if it was because of the twins or what happened, but I ended up like having the ultrasound at like 11 or 12 weeks to see if they had a thick and fold. So only one of them ended up having a thick and fold. Then at
And
12
for
weeks,
people listening that don't know, a thickened nuchal fold is a really big indicator of Down syndrome in utero if you're not doing like a amniocentesis or a CSV, which are like intrusive tests. That's like one of the biggest signs of Down syndrome to OBs.
not just Down syndrome, but any other type
Genetic
of
abnormalities.
genetic
Yep. Yep.
abnormality. Right.
Yeah.
So then we ended up getting the NIP test, which is just a blood test, non-invasive too. It came back, I can't remember if it was like
Something
87.5% or
high.
something
Yeah.
positive, right? But since it was twins, they're like, well, without an amnio, we can't tell you if it's one or both of them. And so they're like, with only one of them having a thick and fold, we're going to assume it's just one,
Right.
unless you want an amnio. And I'm like, after 3 miscarriages, like an amniocentesis it's a cause of a
Yes.
miscarriage. And I'm like, I already had like this deathly fear of like having another miscarriage. So I was like, absolutely not. Like, no, I'm not doing that. Actually, I think I kind of skipped ahead. So, no, because I did say we did get it came back as 95% or 85% that one or both of them had Down syndrome. So they're like, do you want to do this? And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I am not going to introduce something that could possibly cause a miscarriage when
Right.
I'm already
Totally.
deathly afraid that my body is going to cause a miscarriage anyways, like without introducing something else. Like, everybody has their reasons whether or not you want to do it. Like, some people have to know for themselves. I didn't have to know. I was okay with it. I was like, no.
So we did the NIPT test, and I found out right before I was 12 weeks that Addie has Down syndrome. And it was like I don't know, 90% chance or whatever. And I did the CSV, which is just a little bit, if you're earlier, you could do CSV. If you're later, you do the amnio, just different tests, same idea. And it's funny how our experiences color that, because they told me there's a tiny chance of miscarriage, and I was like, young and dumb, and I was like, I've never had a miscarriage before. This is worth it so that I can plan for the rest of the pregnancy. We were never going to terminate, obviously, but I wanted to know. And so we did the test, and obviously Addie's here and she's fine. In hindsight, now knowing things that I know, hearing people's stories, if this happened again, I would not, though.
Right, exactly. Well, but like I said, it's all about, like, there's no judgment if you do
Oh,
it. But it
yeah,
was one of
yeah.
those things, like, my my ultimate fear was having a
And
miscarriage
you'd been
and
through
losing
that
these
so many
babies.
times.
And especially on top of the fact that, um, like it was twins.
Yeah.
So like technically if you wanted to do it, it'd be like you should do both and not just
Oh,
one.
yeah.
And then it's like doubling the chance. And then if one of them miscarries, there's a chance it might do the other one too. And it was insane. Like I was like,
That's too
no, no,
much.
no,
Yeah.
no, I can't do this. Right. So on in this journey too, like I was on one of the Reddit like sublinks for abnormal NIPT tests, and I was like talking about this amnio and like not wanting to do it and like the risk of miscarriage, and I got like attacked, and I was like, what the heck? I was like, I like termination is not an option for me. Like, listen, if you're gonna terminate your child, you need to 100% get an amnio, because
Yes.
if you're gonna terminate, you need to know 100%, right?
Yes.
But also it like
It wasn't going to
what I
change
was
your
saying, I
choice.
was like, I'm not going to have a termination, so why would I do that? Like, I
Yeah.
don't care, let's just put the check mark by it. Both of them have it, I don't care, it's fine. Like we're older, we're, you know, like I'm in my 30s, like I have a career, like
You guys
my,
are
you know, we're good,
stable.
like
Yes.
we're stable, like my parents live in next door, my, you know, his parents live in the other, like we have supports.
You are my
Like I
bougie
get
friend.
that's
Yes.
not, that is not everybody's situation. I am very privileged and blessed for that, but also like that was our choice. I was like, no, I'm good, I'm not doing that, we're fine. And after I got like attacked on there, like one person reached out to me and was like, listen, you need to look up the Down Syndrome Diagnosis Network, because they're very supportive of you keeping your child. And it sounds like, you know, that's what you're going to do. And so that's how I discovered that. I was like, holy crap, like, oh my God, this is the most amazing like community, because I got into the pregnancy one where like group where everybody was talking about like their pregnancies and how scared we were from like what all the unknowns, because like
I love that
everybody
group.
tells you about it. Right. So, you know, it was a very bumpy pregnancy. Like every single time I saw the doctor, it was another thing. Like the first time it was twins, then it was a nocturnal fold, then it was like when I found out that they might have Down syndrome, like the doctor called and was like, you need to come in today. And I came in, and like I had already cheated and looked on like Quest Labs or whatever, my lab report, and I like had known that that's what we're doing, but I wanted to hear how they were going to describe it to us, right? And she was just like, she told us, and she was like, do you want to see a genetic counselor? Like, what are your questions? How can I help you? Like, my OB was amazing. She was awesome.
That's
and I was
great.
like, well, what is the genetic counselor going to tell me? We already know they have it. Then what? I'm like, termination is not an option. So what is it going to tell me? Is it going to tell me if she has a heart defect? No. Like same thing with the amnio. Like, is it going to tell me if she have a heart defect? No. You just have to wait until the ultrasound, like at 20 weeks or 25 weeks or whatever.
Yep.
So I'm like, what's the point? Like, no. Like, and so I never saw the genetic counselor. And so I was like, well, my only question to her was, do you think they're going to be able to breastfeed? Because I did that with my first, and that was important to me. And she was like, honestly, they have the same chance that every other baby has. And I was like, that's a very good answer, because she's like, some babies, typical babies, don't do it at all. So who
Yeah.
knows? Like, she goes, all I know is that some do and some don't.
Yeah.
And there's no real like, oh, this percentage. So I went into this believing that they could. Mind you, we had lots of other complications. We'll get to that. But so every time I went in, it was like another thing. It was another thing.
Yes.
So then the one that had the thick and fold, they ended up having a heart defect. So they're like, okay, yeah, she definitely has it. This was baby B, and baby A was my healthy baby, right? So we go on at 26 weeks, a normal like high risk doctor, the MFM doctor. We went to an ultrasound, and of course, one of those things where they get quiet and you're like, what's going on? And then he comes in with
The
the
worst
nurse and
feeling.
like everybody else, and you're like,
Yep.
okay, what's going on? And they're like, okay, one of your
It's like
babies
the
is
air in the
having...
room changes. It's crazy. You just know when doctors are getting ready to tell you something bad. It's like now
Yep.
I know you and I know it so well. It was so scary at first though.
No, and he's like, okay, so one of the babies has absent diastolic flow, which is the blood flow through the umbilical cord wasn't flowing correctly. And he's like, I'm gonna need you to go check in the hospital. Well, I'm in Destin. It's like a small town in the Panhandle, and we don't have any like really big hospitals. We have smaller hospitals. So
Yeah.
the closest NICU is over in Pensacola, and that is an hour and a half, 50 to 70 miles away from me. So
Yeah.
And that one does have a level 3 NICU. And so, but at the time I was like, oh, okay, I'll just check in over here, like to my
You're
local
26
hospital. And he's
weeks.
like, oh,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. You need to go check into the other hospital over there. That's an hour and a half away. And I'm like, oh, for what? For how long? I don't understand. And of course, no idea what's going on.
Right.
At the time too, I had no idea that there were different levels of NICU, and that the different levels of NICU meant what level of care they could handle. So the one over here was just a level 2, which in general, the level 2 really only deals with bottle feeding and very like, like low blood sugars and like the minor,
Mm-hmm.
like they're going to stay less than a week type of things.
Right.
And we had to go to level 3 because at 26 weeks they were only 2 pounds and 1 pound 13 ounce, and so they were teeny. And so I went over there on a Thursday thinking, and they're like, okay, you're probably going to be here till 32 weeks. Right now I'm 26 weeks, thinking I'm going to be here for 6 weeks, and I'm like, oh my god, that's the end of the world.
Little did we know.
That was a Thursday, yeah. Little did we know. Which, oh, by the way, if you ever go into the hospital and it is a weekend, it's a good place to die on a weekend because nobody is there. None of the specialties are there. Like, nobody wants to work on the weekend. Everybody gets everything put off until Monday. Like, oh my God.
No
So
having babies on
anyways,
the weekend.
oh my God. I mean, you can just make sure it's not a complicated baby. So I'm in there and like it had turned to reversal by Sunday. And honestly, they should have delivered the babies on Sunday, but they didn't. They decided to wait until Monday when everybody was in. That being said, it is what it is, and it might have been a better thing. Who knows? Because like, so when I went in, we had to do it. It was 26 and 5 days, and they're like, we have to deliver the babies. And so we go in to do a C-section, and each baby had their own team. They have like NICU, doctor, nurse, which is the pediatrician, then my OB, like each one of them, like, and then I had my own team. So we had 3 teams of people in this tiny little room because it's an older hospital. And I was like, wow, you guys don't have any bigger, like, operation rooms? No. Anyway,
Always
so,
bougie.
we end up, yeah, so we end up delivering my Elizabeth Daisy. She was first. She was 1 pound, 13 ounces. And then Catherine was 2 pounds. I didn't get to hold them or see them, but they did cry.
Yeah.
And then they got whisked away. And
Take a breath. It's okay.
we go into it thinking, I'm like, I know that, like, when they're born at 26 weeks, there is actually an 87% chance that they're going to survive. And so you go in thinking that's, like, a really good chance, right? And they came back, like, while I was still in the recovery room being like, Elizabeth is having way more issues than everybody else. She's going to need a transfusion. I need your consent. And so I'm like, yes, you can have it, like whatever, just do whatever you have to, right? So when you have babies that small and that early, it is so different. I mean, I thought I was traumatized with an emergency C-section at 39 weeks. Lord, did I not have any idea what this was like. And so you go from the recovery room into your postpartum room and you don't have your babies.
Yeah.
And it's just awful. And so I tried really hard to get there. Like, my nurse was like, I'm gonna like go, and so she let me go over there. But I was so sick from like the magnesium and like all the things.
Yeah.
The second I got into their rooms, I like puked and they kicked me out.
No.
They're like, you need to go see your own doctor.
Yeah.
You are not well. Like, you cannot do this. Like, and we can't take care of you over here. We only
Right.
take care of teeny babies, right? But I was very thankful that like I gave birth at the hospital where they could handle them,
Yeah.
because I was just down the hall and they weren't like life flighted to a whole nother hospital, right? So then I didn't end up getting to see them until like 12 hours later, which, it's like 4 o'clock in the morning. I had them at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So at like 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm over there.
Yeah.
And the first doctor that comes in, I'm like, okay, what's going on? And the doctor's like, she introduces herself and she's like, like, I don't know. And I'm like, at this point, I'm like irate. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? How do you not know what's going on? What are you doing in here? And she's like, I'm an OB. I'm here to like check on you. And I'm like, in the NICU room. I'm like, why are you here? And she's like, because you had surgery less than 12 hours ago and I need to check on you. Like, apparently, like, I just left my room and my nurse, like, freaked out and,
They're
like,
like, where's our
called the OB
patient?
on, yeah, called the OB on staff. Like, she came and was like, sought me out in the NICU and was like, I need to check you out. And I'm like, what, why? Because you had major surgery 12 hours ago. Like,
Yeah.
sit down. Like, why are you standing? I'm like, because
My
my baby's
babies.
in the NICU.
Yeah.
Like, I have two of them. They had their own rooms. So, like, anyways. So then, uh, so then on her first day, so they were actually born the day before my birthday too. So they were born on January 31st and my birthday was February 1st. So on my birthday, we ended up getting the news that Elizabeth had the one that needed transfusions. She was supposed to be my healthy baby. She wasn't
Right.
the one with the heart defect, right? So we ended up getting the news that she had leukemia. Like, they thought it was TAM, which is another thing that Down syndrome kids can have at birth that don't necessarily turn into leukemia, but it can. So it's an indicator that they can get it. So I was hoping that that's what it was, but it
Right.
progressed so quickly. And they're like, no, this is AML leukemia. So, and then by some miracle, we were actually at a hospital where they had an oncology like unit in the hospital. So they pulled the oncology nurses from a different floor to come up to the NICU, which they had never been before. And so they actually ended up giving her chemo, my little 1 pound, 13 ounce baby. Like, that is even a thing.
It's
Like,
crazy.
who knew that that was a thing, right?
And I will say, just for people that are listening, that children with leukemia children with Down syndrome are at an increased risk of leukemia. But, and Tiffany, you can probably talk to this better, but being born with leukemia is very rare. And being born with the pre-leukemia, like they call it, the TAM, is much, I'd say, more common. It still is not one of the big things people worry about with Down syndrome births. That's later on.
Oh yeah, not at
Yeah.
all. Like, it's one of those things that I learned after the fact that
Yeah.
like a lot of the Down syndrome kids have the TAM, and it's just one of
Yes.
those markers where they're like, okay, now we're just gonna monitor you
Yes.
so we can find out like early so that we can treat it early and like all this, right?
Yeah.
So yes, no, like, I mean, having and with this diagnosis, the doctors were all like, oh, they messed up the ultrasound. She must have been the one with the thickened fold and this and that, but she didn't have a heart defect, right?
Yeah.
So but they went ahead and tested her. And she survived she was born on Monday and she ended up passing away on Friday. And it was just, God.
You're doing great. I know you and I have talked about this so many times, but you're doing a really good job.
I know. Well, it's just one of those things like nobody, I mean,
No, you don't
you
ever
know,
expect
and then
that to
I
be
hear
you.
one of those things like, oh, it's super rare. Oh, it's super rare. And I was like, I swear to God, if I hear rare one more time, I'm gonna throat punch somebody. Like, I don't care how rare it is. Like,
Yeah,
it's
it's
still
my kid.
happening.
Yeah.
Like, it's still happening.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the nurses were wonderful and everything.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, I didn't even get a chance to properly grieve either because I still had a 2 pound baby
Yeah.
in the NICU that I had to take care of. So, Elizabeth had passed away, but Catherine was still here.
Yeah.
And it was, so hard to just be in the NICU just in general. And then, you know, now I'm a lost mom.
Yeah.
And then it was one of those things, since they thought Elizabeth had it and they tested her. I found out after she got diagnosed, or I'm sorry, after she passed away, that that they had it.
Yes.
Or that she had it, right?
Down
so at this
syndrome,
point in time, that she had Down syndrome. And at this point in time, it's really funny because, like, I was super scared of this diagnosis and all the rest of this, but I had found the Down Syndrome Diagnosis Network. I had found, like, through friends of friends, a local Down syndrome group. It's called Amora's Mission and the Florida Panhandle. I mean, they, like, came and visited me at the Ronald McDonald House and, like, dropped off baskets. And, like, I mean, I found this whole new community.
Yeah.
And it was so welcoming and supportive. And like when she passed away, I mean, I was sad for obvious reasons because she
Yeah.
passed away, but I was also like super heartbroken because I was thinking I just lost this whole new support system that I had, that was helping me
Yeah.
through all of this. And then I was just like, you know what, it's fine. We're just gonna, move on. And so the Down Syndrome Diagnosis Network has a birth group. And so I was like not a part of that at all. I was still a part of the NICU group because I was still in the NICU, and they're like,
Yeah, of
it's fine,
course.
like we're here for you, like it's good, right? So they didn't end up testing Catherine at all until like a month into it. I had a visiting doctor come in and actually read my whole pregnancy history and Catherine's whole history and Elizabeth. And he was like, why hasn't she been tested? Can we test her? And I was like, sure, like that's fine, whatever. Like I'm, just we're surviving here, right? And then after he did the test, like I'm thinking, she didn't have it because none of the nurses said anything. And so I was
Yeah.
sitting here thinking, okay, she doesn't have it. Like, now what am I going to
And
do?
I
Like,
hate to interrupt you, but I want to like say, because when Addie was born, she was 6 pounds. You could see her features. We could tell. We knew she had Down syndrome, but you could tell. A 2 pound baby, you can't tell.
no, they look
I
like
don't want
tiny
anybody
little
to like hear
aliens.
this and be
Like,
like, how
no,
did you know?
they, no,
You
they look
can't.
like tiny little
They
aliens,
look
but
like
they all
aliens.
look
They
like
are
that. Like, their
so
eyes
like
are too
they're
big.
the
Like,
size of a
they're like
toy.
teeny.
Yes.
They were the size of my cell phone.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
literally, my cell phone was
So,
bigger. Like, I mean,
yeah,
finding clothes for Elizabeth for her funeral, like, I had to go and have, like, doll clothes. Like,
yeah,
literally. Like, it was smaller than my child's doll's clothes,
yeah.
okay?
So
Like,
you
it was
couldn't
so
look at her
tiny.
and tell that
No,
she had Down
yeah.
syndrome.
No,
Yeah,
no. It
yeah,
was just, it was not really a thing.
yeah.
Like, yeah. So, so at this point, I think Catherine was 3 pounds, and it was one of those things. So what had happened was the doctor like got the positive back, and at this point, I couldn't go and cheat. Like I couldn't like look it
Yeah.
up. Um, and so he waited until we were in and made the nurses tell him. And so he came in like after hours because I think whenever it was like we didn't come in at normal time or maybe it was a weekend. I can't remember, but he came in personally because he didn't want
Yeah.
anybody to give the news. Like he wanted to be the one to do it, and he was so nice and compassionate and just the sweetest thing. It was like, I wanted to be here personally to tell you that she does, and I want to tell you that it's not going to change. Like we still value her life, like all these things. And he said literally all the right things.
That's making me cry. Hearing that they're not
Right,
going to treat her any
exactly.
differently and they're still going to fight for her life is like the most affirming thing you could have heard in
I
that
know, I
moment.
know.
You're grieving, you're postpartum, yeah, yeah. I'm really happy you had such
Exactly.
great
And
delivery of
so
that.
it was really amazing. So I was very, very happy that he was the one who did it. And then he was like, is there anything you want to talk about? And like, here's what I really want to talk about. It's like the difference in that particular diagnosis at that moment from when I first thought she might or they might have it
Yeah.
was night and day, because at this point I was hoping for a positive. I wanted
Yeah.
her to have Down syndrome because I wanted to be a part of this community,
You
and
had
like
this support
I
system
didn't want to lose
created.
it. Exactly. And at that moment was when I realized why, we call ourselves a lucky few, because we are so lucky to have them, and they are such warriors. Oh my God, they try so hard. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah. It's crazy.
So yeah, so then Catherine was a rock star. She spent 103 days in the NICU. Towards the end, I'm gonna talk about like my traumatic experience too. Towards the end, she was looking like she was going to come home. She started having she was like on room air for like 5 weeks, and she was like this little rock star. But then she started having trouble breathing and this and that, and so she had to get on oxygen. And then she ended up getting a virus in the NICU. And when she did that, she was having a lot of hard time breathing. They were talking about sending her home because she was doing good.
And
She
I think
started
this is
eating
when
through a
you and I
bottle.
started talking, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is when
Yes.
Tiffany and
And
I started talking because at this point, Addie was either born or about to
oh no, actually
be.
no, I didn't. No,
Oh, is
we
that
didn't
later?
start talking until Addie was in the
Is
hospital
that?
because
Oh,
I
okay,
reached out
okay,
to
okay.
you
Yes. Okay, I couldn't
because this
remember.
was May, and I don't think Addie was born yet. So like,
Addie
and
was
I
born
wasn't
in
really
May, so okay.
and I wasn't really active. Actually, this was April, so I wasn't really active in the
Oh,
birth group yet
Addie
either.
didn't
So
exist yet
so it
then.
wasn't right. So it was one of those where it was like, so she got a respiratory virus,
Hmm.
and we were only there in the hospital like at night because we were trying to get her to drink from a bottle so she could go home, because that's one of the things in the NICU, like you talked about in the last one, that they have to drink from a bottle to go home, or they, go get a G tube kind of
Yeah.
thing. So they
Yeah.
have a way to eat, and gain weight. So we were there to try and make sure that she was getting a bottle, because sometimes in the NICU, like the nurses get too piled up and they don't actually like try and feed them the bottle. They just put it through the tube because that's easier. So
Yeah.
we're like, no, 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 we're going to do this, right? So we just so happened to be there. And thank goodness we were. Like, that was a godsend, because if we weren't, I don't know if she would have come home from the NICU. We had a respiratory therapist who like didn't know what he was doing and was told to put her on from like low flow, like pure oxygen, to a high flow, and he did it without, like, she was on like 1 or 2 liters of like pure oxygen, and he switched her to like high flow with like room air and like no oxygen, and she like plummeted with her oxygenation. Like, I saw her go blue. It went down to like 20. Like, and he wasn't doing anything, and he silenced the alarm, and I started screaming, and my nurse came in, and she like had to resuscitate her, and I like freaked out. Just like, me and my husband were there, and I like freaked out, right? And so she resuscitated, put the oxygen back on, like did all these things, and like I'm like having a full panic attack here while she's doing all these things, and I'm like, I like just had to watch it. And then he was like, oh, well, she really needs to be on high flow. And I was like, do not touch my baby. And I looked at my nurse. I was like, don't let him touch my baby. And he was like, well, fine, I'll go talk to the doctor. Well, the doctor wasn't able to come in because it's like 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning. And they actually had 2 doctors. They had a doctor and a PA, but they were dealing with twins in the level 3 NICU. So they were both busy with like these high risk baby, teeny tiny babies that just got born, right?
Yeah.
And neither one of them could come see us. So they're like, okay, sent him back and was like, no, she has to be on the high flow, because mind you, she was having an issue and she
Yeah.
needed to. But I didn't understand what was going on with the high flow, low flow, and the oxygen and room air and all the rest of that fun things, because like if you're on a ventilator or high flow, the FiO2 is how much oxygen is in there on top of what the like flow pushing through is. And it's not the same thing as like a tank of oxygen. Like a tank of oxygen is different. Like you're getting pure oxygen as opposed to like pushing air through plus the FiO2, right? I learned all this stuff way later. But anyways, so normal room air oxygen is 21%. So that's like the benchmark. Well, I had no idea. And he kept flipping her over from like 2 liters of full oxygen to 21%, which is like 0 extra oxygen. So like if you're going from 2 liters of pure oxygen to a high flow, you need to have the FiO2 has to be somewhere around like 40% or something like that. It's like 40 or 50%. And so he kept just like taking it away, and that is what she needed. Mind you, she also needed the like flow push, but he didn't understand that. And he's a respiratory therapist. That is literally his job, right? And so I'm talking to the nurse, the poor nurse. We're in like the level 2 who only deals with like feeding. And
Yeah.
she's like, oh my God, like what is going on? And I'm like, he's like, well, the doctors told me I had to. And I was like, absolutely. She was like, do not touch this baby. So she went and got the charge nurse. Charge nurse is like, I promise I won't let her go down further than like her oxygen levels go down further than 60%. So they flipped her over again, and when she went down to 60%, she was like, all right, we're putting her back on regular oxygen. And then they called the doctors again, and they were just like, bring her down to the third level, because they know what to do, right? Well, after all of this craziness, she like had to go, she had to go up to like 80% oxygen and like all this craziness. And like she ended up having to have like a blood transfusion. And I had so much PTSD from there. At
Of
that point in time,
course.
I refused to leave the room.
Yes.
And there wasn't showers or anything. I was like, I don't care. Like, I'm not leaving. I'm sleeping in this chair.
Yeah.
Like, I am not leaving. I'm not leaving. I don't trust anybody. Like, and my husband was like, you can come on. I'm like, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
He finally convinced me to take a shower at like the Ronald McDonald House in the hospital, like at some point in time. But I was like, I'm not leaving. So she ended up getting better, but she ended up getting also diagnosed with pulmonary pulmonary hypertension. And so that's what we figured out was the reason why she needed the pure oxygen and not the flow. The flow she needed at the moment because she had a respiratory virus, so they were trying to like keep her from having pneumonia, but she needed the oxygen
Yeah.
that like and couldn't be on room air. So eventually, I think 2 or 3 weeks later, we ended up going home on oxygen and then also sildenafil for the pulmonary hypertension. And there was a there one of the night nurses gave me a really cool, I'll have to send it to you, YouTube video of a NICU doctor explaining very plain language for like normal people to understand what pulmonary hypertension is, and like in order to understand it. And after that I was able to like breathe because I needed to know what was going on. Here's all my numbers. I need my numbers and charts, right? Tell me what's going on.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, for everybody listening at home, you can't tell, but Tiffany and I are back on a second conversation. We're actually going to split this conversation that we had into 2 episodes because we did chit chat for a very long time, and I don't want to keep you guys here for hours. So we're going to end this conversation here and start back up the next episode with the second half of our conversation. I will say that when this is going to be coming out for you guys on Thursday, I will be in a plane on my way to Georgia where Tiffany and I will be roommates at the Down Syndrome Diagnosis Network Moms Retreat, and I am so excited to see her. Tiffany, do you want to chime in with your 2 cents about this first half of the episode?
Yeah, so we're going to end the first half with all the pregnancy, the loss, the miscarriages and everything, and the NICU stay. And so one of the things we wanted to point out is that my NICU stay and all the complications with Elizabeth and everything with even Catherine, like all of that was very atypical. Most moms that have or that are pregnant with Down syndrome babies go full term, or they go to at least 37 weeks. Having a NICU stay for their child to learn how to eat from a bottle is typical, but that's maybe a week to 3 or 4 weeks, depending on how early and the muscle tone and that kind of thing. So that is typical, but being born at 26 weeks is very, very, very rare. And my baby being born and getting diagnosed with AML leukemia is super rare. It's like 1 in 5 million. Having 2 babies that were, they were die babies. They were in separate sacs with separate placentas. Both of them having Down syndrome is also very rare. That's another 1 in 5 million as well. And most of my complications really came from it being I had a lot of the infertility complications and everything, but it was really like the multiple births. Multiple births it is actually, if you have twins or triplets or any more than one baby, it is actually typical to have preterm labor, but not as early as 26 weeks. And I know there's several other moms that have had the absent diastolic flow with their baby, and they still went full term. It went on and off and on and off, and they were fine. They went in the hospital and came back out. It still ended up going full term. Mine was just very atypical, and that's part of the reason why you and I get along so well, is because everyone else in our mom group, that's 100 plus people that, were born within 6 months of us, they all had very typical babies that didn't have very many issues except for some milestones being behind. And that's why we got along, was because we are those outliers.
Yes. Yeah. The last thing we want to do is scare anybody away from welcoming a child with Down syndrome. We had some crazy journeys with our babes the first year of their lives, and that's just not typical. So, yeah, thanks, Tiffany, for talking about that. So I guess we'll end this episode with a question to round it out. My question is, if you had all the time in the world, what would you advocate for?
Well, I have a few things that I would love to advocate for. One of them would be advocating for just pregnancy and infant loss, and just everything that goes along with that. I mean, one of the things that should be a requirement for life insurance, like I had life insurance, I bought that when I was pregnant with my oldest, my typical child, was they should have a rider that requires them to also cover pregnancy and infant loss, because I mean, I had a full funeral and I had to pay for it. And, you know, we took it out of savings and it should have been covered.
Yes,
You
that's
know, and we're
horrible.
not talking about like thousands of dollars or anything. We're talking like, you know, $5,000 to like cover the funeral cost, to cover, you know, cremation, to cover these things. There are, you know, charities and different people who do cover those type of things for free at their cost, but they shouldn't have to. Like, it should
Yeah.
be a requirement, especially if I am paying for life insurance, because it's not like while I'm pregnant I can buy life insurance on my unborn child. Like, they won't let you. So why isn't that included in that type of thing? So that's one of the things, because
Yeah.
of the loss and everything that I went through. But also the other thing would be advocating for your child while they're in the hospital. And like the NICU, we were so new and we were so um just naive about everything. And when you go into the hospital, one of the things you do is you think that those doctors know everything and that they are like what they say is the absolute truth, and like there is no other opinion. And what I've learned is that they are human. They only have what they have as their experience, and that doesn't mean that they are the right doctor or the right hospital or the right surgeon for your child. If they're giving you bad news and they're giving you slim, like, oh, I don't know, like your child isn't going to have this or they're going to do that, or like talking to you about how maybe you should not be fighting as hard for your child to do this or have this surgery or do that, it might be because they just don't see the fight in your child, and that you need to understand that that is not necessarily their bias, which half the time it is their bias, thinking that your child is not worth it. But also the other half is that's just their experience. So you can't fault them for that. I mean, this is your baby, you know, like it's not their baby, it's their job and
Yeah.
it's your baby. So you need to be the one to be like, okay, you don't think you can perform that surgery? Fine. I need a second, a third, and a fourth opinion. Let me figure out what hospitals, and not necessarily what hospitals like Boston, you know, let's just talk about like a heart defect, right? So Boston Children's is one of the top rated, and Texas Children is also another top rated for cardiac,
We reached out to
pediatric
both of them in Addie's PICU
cardiac,
stay. Yep.
right?
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that those are the only ones.
Mm-mm.
And it doesn't mean that the surgeons on those staff have actually performed that particular surgery. So what it is we have to do research on what the surgery is needed for what specific heart defect, because just saying there's a hole in the heart, by the way, there are millions of different kinds of, well, not millions, but there's like a ton of different kinds of like heart defects that it can be. So if it's one specific thing where it's like an ABSD, if it's balanced or not balanced, or, you know, these, or, you know, the things that we have, because actually our babies have the same thing and also have not had a repair yet. It's the
Mm-hmm.
atrial defect, which is holes in between the top two chambers of the heart. And it's one of those things where you want to do the research to make sure it is the right surgeon that understands that particular defect, but also believes in your child. Because if
Yes.
you have a team of doctors or surgeons that don't believe that your child can make it through that surgery, they are not the hospital for you. They are
Exactly.
not the surgical team for you. And even in the NICU or the PICU, if they are not treating you like that, I mean, not every country has that choice that you can move, but here, as long as you're going to another, like a higher rated hospital or the same rated, they usually don't bite you too bad on it, because it's, you just can't go from a high rated one to a low rated
Yes.
one, because
Yeah.
then they're like, what if something happens, and
Yeah.
that they don't want to have to transfer you back to a higher rated one, kind of thing. But yeah, it's just, that's the one thing, is like, I want the parents to be empowered to understand that you have a choice and you need to do the research on who these teams are and what they're capable of doing, and make sure that you know, like place your child in the right location for what is going on, because that's going to give them the best chance at having that like normal life and recovery afterwards and everything. So
Yes, I love
if I
that.
had all the time in the world, I would love to empower all the parents.
You're doing great at it, though. You're doing great with what you are doing. We don't have all the time in the world. We can only advocate so much. But yeah, I think that's great advice. So, okay. If you've made it this far, thank you for joining Tiffany and I. We'll be back next week to share the second part of her journey with her child in the PICU. Yeah, go ahead and leave 5 stars, share this podcast with a friend or two. If you're on social media, my TikTok is at The Inclusion Effect and at Uplife of Addie. And I do also have an Instagram at The Inclusion Effect. I'm working on being better at keeping up with that. Thank you so much to everyone for helping me build this community of advocates. And we'll talk to you next week.
Bye.